Hey, HTDA, and today we're playing some more Oxygen and Not Included. And as you might see, I have a bit of a problem over here because most of my plants are no longer growing because apparently I have a pressure issue. Now that's a little bit worrying. There's still oxygen, there's plenty of oxygen actually in my base. The main issue is that for some reason the pressure went down. I think that's probably because I was underproducing it for a little while there. But now my electrolyzer is working overtime. It's pretty much working non-stop. I should say my hydrogen generator is working non-stop. And because of that, it is trying to spit out the oxygen that it now produces all over the place. So I'm hoping that that will solve the issue. As you can see, there is plenty of gas moving all across. That is being spit out wherever it can get out. And yeah, hopefully that will solve that issue. If not, we'll just have to build a few more oxygen generators. I'm going to keep an eye on that, as if the breathability drops too low, we might just have to add in a few more. Maybe, honestly, maybe I could just add in a few more of these production facilities, because there's nothing in here that is particularly unique. We just need some water, we need some hydrogen generator, and we need a pump. And honestly, more power is probably not a bad idea to begin with. But I'm just gonna hold out for the moment and see how this turns out. Now, speaking of water, we are going to have to filter some of the polluted water into normal water, because otherwise this is gonna run out. And I think I want to prioritize this with this facility over here, because we are now actively producing some polluted water over here, and well, we might as well put that to use. And in order to keep my base nice and organized, I decided, well, why not just make a water sieving area over here that's about halfway between where the polluted water is, where my normal water is. And that way I keep everything a little bit nice and organized. Although, alternatively, I could actually do that over here as well. Does that make more sense? Or, you know, up here? Yeah, maybe we should actually do it up here so we can sieve the water both from this direction as well as this direction, depending on where we have the most. How about this? I have a water sieve over here and one over here. This one is going to filter this water, and this one is going to filter the water coming from down here. Now, we already had a pump over here that was supplying the water to my pip farm, but I might as well double up on that, make sure we don't need an additional pump. There's not that much water going in here anyway, so as you can see, all the reservoirs are completely full, by the way, and this water is still almost filled up as well, so might as well start to use some of that water. Now that is going to go up in this sieve over here, and that is going to connect right up to the other output as well. Then that is going to be producing clean water. That clean water is going to be partially split off actually into here, which is the pipeline going out to my bristleberry farm. Well, farm is a large word for that, but okay. Just to make sure I don't need to double up on this output, so the pump only needs to be working whenever there's not enough water coming from out here. And then I'm gonna put a output here. Now I believe that a water sieve, let me double check on that. I also notice you can just search all your buildings in here, which is super convenient. Yeah, this is going to produce 5 water per kilogram, and if I remember correctly, a single liquid pipe should be able to handle 10 kilograms per second. I'm sure I saw that somewhere. Maybe it's the valve. Hold on, we have one of them over here. This is a vent. Let's see. I'm honestly not overpressure. No, that's not it. Well, anyway, let's see. Yeah, so a single tile can handle 10 kilograms of water. I'm not sure if the throughput is 10 kilograms per second that way as well, but well, either way, I guess we're about to find out. Something else we might need to handle at some point is the fact that my power grid seems to be slightly overloading at this point. I'm not entirely sure what to do about that yet, but one thing at a time. Let's finish this up and then start worrying about our power grid. And while we're working on the plumbing anyway, I figured why not upgrade this washing basin over here to a sink, because I think that should get me another colony achievement. And yep, there we go. We have the royal flush. Replace all the outhouses and wash basins in your colony with lavatories and sinks. And honestly, we're making quite a bit of progress in terms of the colony achievements at this point. So, 2 water sieves up and running. They are filtering the water from both our polluted water reservoirs. Now, I might actually want to relocate my Pacus, because this is not getting replenished at the moment, while this one, in theory at least, is. And there's definitely a lot more water that we can dump in here as well. So yeah, I might want to just put my Pacos in here. Or actually, I could just put my Pacos in my clean water reservoir. I mean, we never want this to run out anyway. And I think you guys, hold on, you guys can survive in there as well, right? Yeah, water or polluted water. So that's okay. Yeah, so I might want to relocate this. However, if this runs out, we have a problem. But speaking of problems, yeah, my wires are getting broken, and that's because we're overloading the power grid. Now, how am I going to solve that? I think I'm going to solve that by redesigning my electrolyzer hydrogen generator setup a little bit. And we're also going to need to deal with some other forms of transporting power. I mean, I've been using wire so far, but it has a maximum power of 1000 watts. We also have heavy watt wire, which runs 20 times as much, but it's really horrible for decor. So we'll need to think a little bit on where to place that. We also have conductive wire, which is basically just twice as efficient as normal wire. Not entirely sure about that. This requires copper to build. This requires normal copper ore to build. So this is a lot more efficient. We could also just use heavy watt conductive wire, which is 50 kilowatts, but that seems a little bit of overkill at this point. However, the power transformers are, I think, what we need to use, that because this is going to limit power flowing through a transformer to 1000 watts. So that means that as long as I have a power transformer in between my power generation and where we need the power to go, then that should mean the normal wire cannot be overloaded. Now, where can I build this? Can I just build this up in the air? Looks like it. So that's kind of cool, because then we can build it kind of like here, for example, and then funnel the wires through that to the sides of where the stuff is going to be. Interesting. Well, I'm gonna think about that for a moment, but I also want to redesign this, because the problem I have over here is that I only have a single pump, and I just realized that a gas pump has a maximum throughput of 500 grams, while the electrolyzer is putting out 1000, so we need two pumps actually per electrolyzer to make sure that, well, the stuff can actually go somewhere. So, yeah, that is something we need to think about. And now we have so much water at our disposal. I'm kind of wondering if I should double up on my hydro generator while I'm at it. So I'm gonna rip all of this out, because what I'm thinking right now is it might be more efficient to make a vertical setup for these electrolyzers, especially if I want to double up on them, because that means we're gonna have to put in a lot of pumps. Well, at the same time, I also need to consider the actual power throughput, because one of these things is already going to produce, what was it, 800? Yeah, 800 watts. So I have two of them. I'm going to overload my wires to begin with. Interesting. Well, let's just rip everything out and see what I can come up with. So here is the basic idea. I'm going to set up an electrolyzer with two pumps right above it, and no way for the oxygen to escape as far as I'm aware. And that should make sure that everything this thing is producing is actually being pumped somewhere. Now, at the same time, I'm also going to make sure I have two hydrogen generators to absorb all of that, and then some power storage above that. Now, the reason I'm putting this power storage right above that is because I want to use some of that heavy wire. This one, the cheap one, I cannot run this through a wall or floor. So what I need to do is basically hook this up like so. And there we go. And this should get the power over there. Now, in order to get this power to where it actually needs to go, I'm gonna add in this second floor. And hopefully, yeah, actually, I think I need to cancel this one and then put some transformers up here to basically split off this power. So I'm thinking of doing that something like that, and then my wires can basically be split between two sides of my base. Now that means that each side of my base can only handle up to 1000 watts. But honestly, I'm not using that much power, I don't think. So yeah, I should be able to kind of have that work like intended. I hope. I kind of want to get rid of my coal generators altogether once I have this up and running, so you can ignore those. And yeah, I think that should pretty much work like intended. I'm thinking about just running 2 cables on each side of my base and basically just making that left and right. I'm not sure that my power consumption is completely balanced between left and right, but it's probably going to be close enough that it doesn't really care, that I don't really care. And a lot of these machines, honestly, don't have a high priority. I don't really care if every now and then some of these transporters and stuff like that break down for a moment because, I don't need these to work all the time anyway. Upon reflecting a little bit more, I just realized that this coal facility might be a little bit inconvenient because I can't really use up all the power in the main throughput. So what I think is maybe I just relocate my coal generators over here to the corner. I mean, I might as well make use of them, right? And that way, at least I have another way of producing power on top of the hydro generators, because I also just realized that even though these generators do produce 800 watt of power, about 600 of that is going to go into the electrolyzer and gas pumps. So it's only a net 200 plus production over here. So this is 400 watts. So the coal generators are, for the time being, going to be my main power facility. Now, I am going to do something about that pretty much right after I complete this setup. But yeah, let's get this going first. Okay, this seems to be mostly up and running. Now, I had to completely redo my power lines over here, so you can see I'm still building some of that. But yeah, basically what's happening here, I'm splitting off the power. This is going to go to the right half of my base, and this is going to go down here, jump over, and power the left-hand side of my base. Now, I had a temporary jump in between, but I think, yeah, I completely removed that. So yeah, this is literally just going to power the left half of my base, while this is going to be the right half. Now, I do have the additional coal generators over here, so I think we should be destroying those now. And then this should be handling all of my power. Now, the problem that I have over here is, as you can see, these machines are slightly damaged, and that's happening because for some reason there's a little bit of CO2 coming in here. So I've decided to close this door, so there's no business of anyone moving through here that doesn't need to be in here. I'm actually wondering, can I? Let me double check. Where's my power wire going? So I have my power wire going through here, so I can actually deconstruct these tiles over here and just put in a normal block over here. So that should also prevent any CO2 dropping down in here from up here. So long story short, I think that should solve all the issues I had before. Now, yeah, let me go and do something with these farm tiles, because you might have wondered why I've put them in here, and I noticed that in my previous build, this thing kind of tends to run hull. Now, what I can do is I have a couple of these Weesworth, so only one apparently. Let's start with that though. And then we can grab a few more from, for example, over here. I have another cold biome, I think, yeah, over here, and then another one up here. So I have a couple of these Weesworths that I can just uproot, and then thereby harvesting those and planting them to cool down my little fuel production over here, or my power production, I should say. Well, this is almost working like I wanted to, but the problem is that every now and then this kind of backs up because it can't handle the amount of input from both sides. Mostly because sometimes, for example, over here, once this part is delivering oxygen, this part might be trying to deliver hydrogen, and it can both go into the gas filter at the same time, apparently. So yeah, that's not entirely working like I wanted to, so I'm guessing I'm going to have to double up on the gas filters just to make sure I have enough throughput. The downside of that being that, well, that's going to eat in my power supply again. So basically this is operating at a almost break-even power level, which by itself is not that bad, because in the end I initially built this A, to get access to hydrogen, and B, to get oxygen production going. But yeah, I was kind of hoping to siphon off some power from that as well. Yeah, this seems to be functioning much better than what we had before. So at least there's no backing up anymore. The hydrogen is automatically being combined over here. So you can see these machines are pretty much just working non-stop. Now the only problem is that for some reason these gas pumps are no longer working. It says pipe blocked, but I don't know. There seems to be a pipe just fine over here. So that might just have to do with the fact that, huh, I don't know. Can a single pipe only handle one pump's worth of stuff? That seems impractical. So after fiddling around with it for a little bit more, I came up with this solution that I'm actually quite happy with. I placed the gas pumps under the electrolyzers now, and I have some of these airflow tiles so the oxygen can basically just fall down. The hydrogen should only be moving up, and as you can see, this pump is the only pump that is currently drawing any hydrogen whatsoever. It's also getting a lot of oxygen, so it's still not 100% efficient, I think, and to be honest, I'm not sure I need both of these. But yeah, this is kind of working. As you can see, there's only hydrogen in here. So there's no backing up happening here whatsoever. There is some random CO2 and stuff like that in this pipe as well, but that's not really a problem. And I haven't seen any hydrogen escaping from this little facility over here. So yeah, I think this is actually working somehow. Now, you can see why, because as you can see, the hydrogen is slowly moving up and is then being absorbed by this machine over here and being put into the generator. So yeah, honestly, this is working a lot better than I expected. That saves me one gas filter and actually a pump as well. I only have 3 pumps now up and running. This is kind of relying on the fact that I want my oxygen to be uh, falling down naturally, basically, escaping this room naturally, I should say. So honestly, that means that I should probably not be venting it over here, but trying to vent it anywhere else, basically in my base, so that I can make sure that there's circulation going that way. Okay, so I made a secondary line of oxygen supply to my base, which is basically making sure that this pump is always unobstructed, or at least should be, unless we have a very high gas pressure in our base. But then at least we have all the oxygen we need, so that's nice. It does mean that I shouldn't be relying on my power too much from this setup over here. It's mostly the coal that is the backup. It is producing a fair amount of power, don't get me wrong, so it's working definitely like intended. Not exactly with the amount of gain I was hoping for. Speaking of oxygen gains, I can start to delete these ones now. These were here, just here as a backup to make sure I didn't die in the process while I was rebuilding this, because my breathability dropped down to I think about 55% or so. Obviously not entirely where we want it to be. Oh, look, I have some additional things to deconstruct. There's a background building there for some reason, and we can take care of those automation power lines as well. I set the automation on my batteries now to such a point that I'm only using my coal generators whenever I drop below 25% power, and I stop them as soon as I reach 50%, because again, this is supposed to be supplying most of my power. Now, it's not entirely working yet like I've intended to, but that just means I need more power sources. Okay, so we need more power. Now, first of all, I put all my pacus in my clean water pond now. I'm not sure that makes it a whole lot cleaner, but at least that means they won't be dying when this runs out, if this runs out. But most importantly, if I go to the top left of my base, over here I have a natural gas geyser. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we should be able to produce power with this as well. So here we go. We have a natural gas generator, and all this needs is some natural gas to go in, and then it will spit out polluted water. So that's actually kind of interesting. We can produce more water, and it's also going to spit out some carbon dioxide. I don't really care about that, but it's mostly going to be outputting 800 watts of power. Now that's of course super useful. Yeah, so I think we are just going to build a little facility around this geyser, and we'll investigate how it exactly works, and then we'll take it from there. Something interesting to note is that there's actually oxygen floating on top here. So that means that this natural gas is heavier than oxygen, which is something I think we can use to our advantage when building the gas generator. Well, this was a refreshingly easy setup. As you can see, it's working like intended. We're sucking up the gas over here. Now, honestly, the gas is running out pretty quickly, but this is just a bit of additional power supply that's going to go into these batteries, and these batteries are going to stop producing once they are almost full. But other than that, these are going to be supplying a little bit of extra power to my base. And when I say a little bit, it's actually quite a bit, because this is producing about 1600 watts worth of energy, minus, of course, the gas pump that I need in order to make this work. But other than that, yeah, I mean, working like intended, and I'm kind of liking it. This is obviously not going to be the main power supply, because this thing is also going to go dormant every now and then. But, you know, it's almost free power. Something else that is almost free is the coal that is now being supplied by some of my stone hatches. I'm slowly starting to replace these guys by their more, what do you call that? Their cousins that eat stuff that is less valuable to me, because I am running lowish. Well, not low, but I am slowly running out of dirt. And even though it is going to go very slow, I definitely do not want to run out of dirt, and that also means that I might want to switch up how I'm currently producing my food, because dirt is a finite resource, but at this point I'm now producing water in several places, so I might want to reconsider some of this mealwood production and see if we can make something else that might might require water. But yeah, I'm not running out of water anytime soon. You can see my basin is completely filled up now. This one is slowly running out, but this one is already overflowing actually. So yeah, I might as well use all of that water to some new purpose. Okay, so looking at my base, I'm currently producing a massive amount of mealwood, honestly much more than I actually need. So I was thinking maybe I should switch all of this to bristle blossom production. And when I say all of this, I'm actually going to do some math to see how much of that stuff I need and then just disable all the other mealwood production. Now, what I'm also thinking is I'm producing a massive amount of meat over here. I mean, most of these creatures just end up dying, and at that point, of course, should produce some meat. So there is a lot of meat production here, but I'm not entirely sure how much that is. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to make sure that my Dracos have enough bristleberry, because they can actually eat this as well, right? Just double checking. Hold on. Glossy Dracos. Yeah, they eat mealwood and bristle blossom, so I'm going to switch them to bristle blossom instead. And honestly, bristle blossom actually produces more food per plant than the other one, the mealwood does, because I can also cook this up into a gristleberry, which is basically bristleberry but then cooked. So I'm just going to make sure this is always producing as well. So this is going to produce meat, this is going to produce gristleberries. I might as well also check, couldn't I make something like cooked seafood as well? Yeah, I can make this as well. So let's just make sure that whenever one of my Pacos dies, it's also being cooked up. And then I'm going to remove all the surplus mealwood. So basically that means all the mealwood, I guess, that I am not turning into bristleberries. And I'm going to keep a closer eye on my calorie production to make sure I don't have starvation happening to my dupes instead. I've done a bit of redecoration over here, and everything is now messed up because I have Dracos running around in the Glossy Draco farm. I have Dracos pretty much running around everywhere, to be honest. A lot of them escaped. I'll deal with that in a second. I also placed down 8 Gristle Blossoms because I will have 8 of these Dracos in here, and each one should be having enough food around as long as it has a single plant growing all by itself. Now, of course, that does also mean that I assign some of my plumbing over here, so I have no longer bristle blossoms growing over here because, quite frankly, I don't need them. Now, why are these things not growing? Ah, right, they need lighting. Well, then it's a good thing I now have power to light up the entire base if I want. No, why? If I place a ceiling light like this, one of the plants is just going to be out of reach. Now, if I place it a little higher, it actually works just fine. The main problem with that being that that's not really where I can place my lamp, because that will be in the floor. Now, the real question is, am I going to overcomplicate this for 10 watts of power? Probably not. So yeah, I'm just going to place down 2 lamps right next to each other. Honestly, no, I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to place one of the lamps over here, maybe? I was hoping... Actually, yeah, I can catch the shearing station in the light as well, just so we get a little bit more efficiency out of that second light bulb. And that means that this one over here can go. Not sure why it's not canceling my lamp. Hello? Lamp? Cancel. Let's do it like this. And of course, I do need to make sure I actually have power going to these lamps. But yeah, this should do the trick, I think. And there we go, this is more like it. I have my Dracos where they need to be again, and they should have enough food to keep themselves alive. I'm slowly trying to get my hydrogen back in place so these guys actually get the hydrogen they need to regrow. But, you know, that is all kind of working like intended. Now, I've done the math, and it seems that if I cook my, what is it? bristleberries into gristleberries, I should only need 3 plants per duplicant in order to keep them alive. So if I look over here in this area, I have 24 tiles, which is not exactly 30, the amount I need. But I am inclined to just go with this for now and make sure that my sweetles are also helping me grow those plants. And between the sweetles and the additional meat production I have over here, I'm hoping that that will be enough to sustain my colony without wasting too much resources on overgrowing plants. Because remember, even though I have a lot of water at the moment, I don't want to waste it necessarily either. There we go. Now this is not even 24 of them, because I actually ran out of seeds while planting these, so that's something that came as a bit of a surprise. I assumed that the berries that had been growing there for a very long time should have already generated enough seeds, but we'll just have to wait for that a bit, I suppose. I initially was going to be a cheap bastard and just put up the shine nymphs to do illumination, but that wasn't really 100% effective, and considering this is like literally my lifeline for my duplicants, I figured, well, I'll put in some more lights like I've done right now. So that means we are now completely transitioned away from mealwood into bristleberry production. Is that going to be a problem in terms of water? I don't know, but for the moment I have plenty of water to go around, so I'm not too worried about that for now. I also have a lot of eggs. I built an egg cracker just to make sure I could transform this into some omelets if I needed to. Most of these eggs seem to be transitioning into 1600 calories of raw egg, and if I then go to my thingy over here, I think I can make omelets, yeah, which is actually almost going to double that egg calorie count. So, you know, I have a lot of meat as well as egg storage over here, basically. It's moving around, but it's moving around in a good way. It's also interesting to note, by the way, because initially I thought, well, maybe we'll just make the shine bugs into omelets, but the developers thought about that, and they are far less efficient than anything else. However, the pacus, on the other hand, actually are super efficient in terms of transitioning into eggs. So that is something to take into consideration, maybe at a later date. But for now, I'm kind of worried about my calorie count. But I'm just gonna go through a few cycles and see what happens. Would you look at this little thing? I found a cuddle pip amongst my normal pips, so I took it out and I put it in this enclosure because this thing doesn't quite produce the same amount of dirt that the normal ones do. But this one apparently does like hugging eggs. So if I now check these eggs, some of them should be cuddled or something like that. Yeah, there we go. And apparently that boosts their incubation rate by 100%. So more meat for me, or at least more creatures for me. That's going to be very useful. Something else that was very useful is that someone in the comments pointed out that these critter drop-offs, if you have them set to multiple different things, whenever they restart requesting stuff, they will try to deliver all of those things. So you might get, for example, a hatch as well as a stone hatch if they can deliver it to this location, which of course we don't want. So I'm just going to set it to one single thing. That also explains why most of the other enclosures weren't having as much trouble, because I didn't have other creature types as much as I had over here. So I've now limited all of these things to a single creature type, specifically the adult version of whatever I want to have be in here. And that should hopefully make sure that my farms are a little bit less messy going forward. And while I'm looking around and looking for trouble in specific, this is not working, and it's not working for several reasons. First of all, the gas is not working, but also the natural gas is not going through the floor, and I think that is because the water is actually blocking everything off. So I need a way for this water to get out of here, ideally without having to power anything. I played around with it for a little bit, but I decided to just keep it simple. So I made a little hole in the middle with a mesh tile, so everything can flow through here. As you can see, there's plenty of gas now in here. And the other problem was that if this falls quiet for whatever reason, there's no more power, so everything stops working. So I solved that issue, hopefully, by putting a hamster wheel in here that is just going to activate if the power is really, really low. It is set at a fairly high priority. Now you can see this guy is now running. Everything is again working. The water is being pumped out, so that is working like intended. And then hopefully these gas generators should be able to refill the battery, like you can see over here. I'm not sure how long this guy will keep running. Maybe until the batteries are full. I actually don't know. But by the time he is done, these batteries should be running for quite a while. It also seems that for the moment I have a very strange new issue, and that is that I'm not consuming enough water, because as you can see, everything here is backed up, including the polluted water, which is now starting to overflow here. So yeah, I'm actually going to disconnect this one, because I don't think we don't need to empty the pipe. I don't think we necessarily need to drain this, because, well, it's not being filled up, so let's make sure we at least are draining the one that has the highest priority. But while we're doing that, yeah, this is not really working like intended at all. So what I'm gonna do, I think, is make sure we have a secondary pipeline going to this thingy over here, so that I can use both water sieves to drain this main conduit. Now, that still might not allow me to deal with the water issue over here, but yeah, I should just be spending more water, I guess. So I'm kind of browsing through the plant options that I have left, and there's two that actually stand out to me. So first of all, we have the sleetweed over here that several of you have already also talked to me about in the comments, that I should look into that without going into too much detail. But apparently this is a plant that is very slow to grow. Look, 18 cycles, but it is going to spit out 18 of its grain at the same time when it finally matures. So basically it's just one per cycle, which is honestly better than most of the other plants. But more importantly, what I can use this for is actually a various amount of things. So, for example, I can use 2 of those grains to more than double the calories there are in my eggs when I make them into pancakes. And pancakes are pretty good food, so, I mean, that sounds kind of nice. I can also use 3 of these to make frost buns. Honestly, that sounds a little bit less awesome, but at least I don't have to use the eggs for that. And if I can combine them with some pepper nut, then apparently we can make pepper bread, which is superfood. Also has a lot of calories, but yeah, I don't know. There's actually a couple of other recipes here as well. We could use them in combination with the bristleberries, actually, to turn 1600 calories into 4000 calories. Okay, that sounds actually pretty good. So we can also use it to make brikine. Long story short, there is a whole bunch of stuff that we can do with these things. So yeah, why not plant a couple of those in this area we have over here that we're now no longer using? Or, well, actually, let's do it up here where the rest of our farms are. Oh, and speaking of problems, I just realized that I completely overlooked that these glossy dracos have a different diet than their furry friends, because these don't actually eat these bristle blossoms. So yeah, I'm gonna put these back to mealwood, just because I am not entirely sure I can actually make enough pepper plants. Hold on, what do these things need? They need phosphorite and water. Well, I have phosphorite. I mean, that's what these guys are producing, right? Yeah, oh, okay. That's one way of doing that, I suppose. Now, we get 12.5% of growth from one of these. And how much do you need? Less than that. So, with 6 plants, I should be able to have this entire farm work. The only problem is, these plants are the hanging ones, right? Yeah. We also need to feed it polluted water. Quite a bit of it, actually. Well, I have plenty of polluted water. That's not a problem. Okay. I guess I am once more going to redesign this farm. And then I'm going to redesign it once more, because I didn't realize that these pepper plants need a higher temperature to grow, as well as the sleetweeds, actually, that need a lower temperature to grow. So I actually need to think a little bit better about what I'm planting where and how I'm going to do that. So I think that I'm going to have to redesign this once more to make it functional again, and then we'll have to see where we take it from there. Okay, order has been restored. Well, most of the order. I'm not sure how you got in there, so let me get you out of there. But yeah, this is all functioning again, but it's working on Bristle Blossom as before. I I've left in these tiles so we can switch to the peppers once we figure out how that works, or once I figure out how it works, let's put it like that. And the mealwood is now back in production, but only the minimal amount I need to actually have this farm functioning. So I'm not going back to my old roots of just spamming mealwood all over the place. Okay, now this is obviously not working. I'll just leave it in here again for the same reason, but that does mean that in the near future I will have to take a second look at temperature, basically. But I think that's a nice moment to call this off. This machine seems to be working just fine now. As you can see, we have plenty of power, so the power is working like intended. The water production is working like intended. We have the oxygen production mostly working like intended. As you can see, I have a very good breathability now, and honestly, that just means every now and then this completely stops working. I do have a heat issue here as well, because this is kind of heating up. So yeah, long story short, next episode will have to be about dealing with heat, because I have a feeling this is only going to get worse from this point forward, so I might as well start getting used to it. Now, one last thing I do want to point out is that I actually have some chlorine gas over here. So what I could do is maybe put in a couple of these things, like so. And then use those to start planting some balm lily, because all that needs is chlorine in order to grow, and well, we have plenty of that in here. Okay, I think the game is trying to make a point to me, because these plants also won't grow because of the wrong temperature. They actually need a little bit more heat as well. Now, that might actually be coming off this thing, because this is putting out chlorine gas at 60 degrees, but yeah, for the moment it's not doing anything, because it's not warm enough in this room just yet. It takes a little while for that to heat up. So, long story short, I am going to have to deal with temperature, but I think that is probably going to be an entire episode on its own. So, on a different note though, this episode has been mostly about creatures and getting those up and running and upgrading some of our plants. Now, I do have to note that it seems that we're on a positive calorie gain once more. These plants are slowly growing. I am slowly adding in some calories to my reserves. And, well, just in case I need it, I just put in a critter center over here. There's 125 critters flying around or walking around in here, so that is a lot of food to be gained if I wanted to, and that's not even counting... Is it counting the eggs? Yeah, it is counting the eggs. So 42 of those are eggs, so that's a lot of calories by itself. But yeah, the critters themselves are plentiful as well. So I'm definitely not dying out from hunger anytime soon. Now look, we have another one of those cuddle pips. Cuddle pips? That's what you're called? Cuddle pipsqueak. The tiny ones are pipsqueaks, apparently. But yeah, there's going to be a whole lot of egg cuddling in here, so those eggs are going to grow up even faster than before. And, you know, look at Ashcan being the cook over here. He has a very hard time keeping up with all the food that we now have available in order to barbecue and grill, and the bristleberries turning into gristleberries and stuff like that. So yeah, it is quite a bit of a journey today, but I'm enjoying every moment out of it, and I can't wait to take on the temperature challenge in the next episode. If you're still here, you are awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.